We would
Okay.
have a quorum even without Matt.
Perfect. Okay, thanks.
Okay,
One more sec.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, almost. And we are live.
I call to order this school board meeting for March 25th, 2021 for ISD 834 Stillwater Area Public Schools. Due to the current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home, and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting of the Stillwater Area Public Schools ISD 834 School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Due to the health pandemic, the school board determined that it is not feasible for at least one board member, the superintendent, or the school district's legal counsel to be physically present at the regular meeting location, and that it is not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular meeting location due to the health pandemic. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by streaming the meeting on the Stillwater Area Public Schools YouTube channel. And with that, Joan, can you call the roll, please?
Director Hackert?
Here.
Director Atkin? Director Porbeni? Director Riley?
Here.
Director Sherman?
Here.
Director Weisberg?
Here.
Chair Petrie?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. The Minnesota Open Meeting Law, Minnesota Statutes, Section 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, allows the school board to close a meeting to engage in attorney-client privilege discussions. The district is engaged in the litigation as outlined on the agenda. The board seeks to meet with its attorney to discuss the status of the case. It would be detrimental to the district's interests for the board to hold a public discussion with its attorney where any adverse party or their attorney could listen to or be made aware of the attorney's advice related to the litigation. It is in the district's best interest for the board to obtain legal advice in a confidential setting to maintain the attorney-client privilege. Accordingly, I will hereby entertain a motion that this meeting be closed pursuant to the attorney-client privilege for the reasons cited. Great. Director Hackert moves. Is there a second? Director Sherman seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we go into closed session for an attorney discussion. Joan, can you call the roll, please?
Director Hackert?
Yes.
Director Onken? Director Porbeni? Director Riley?
Yes.
Director Sherman?
Yes.
Director Weisberg?
Yes.
Chair Petrie?
Yes.
You have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. We will go into the closed session with our attorney and we will return to this meeting when we are finished. Thank you.
Oh. We should be careful here. We'll shut that off. I can do that.
Okay, well, I think we can go forward. We have a quorum here. So we are on number 3, which is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? Director Sherman, can I get a second? Director Hockert. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. Joan, can you please take the roll?
You're in the work session right now. Do you want to wait and do that during the open meeting or?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Okay,
My bad.
that's okay.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, too many meetings today. All right, so, okay, we're in the work session. Melinda, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Petrie and Board Directors. We are here this afternoon for a work session regarding our upcoming referendum and some considerations. We'll go to the next slide. So the purpose of tonight's discussion, we do have a lot of decisions that need to be made between now and November 2nd. But tonight's focus will be on asking the board if they would like to consider the lease levy option for the expansion of 8 classrooms for Brookview Elementary, and what is the board's timeline for a bond. Would it be November 2021 when we go out for the renewal of the operating levy, or sometime in 2022 where we have a possibility of 5 special election dates, including February, April, May, August, and November? We'll provide more information on that. We do know that there are many other questions that need to be decided coming up in future work sessions this spring and summer. Will be more discussions on what is included in the referendum, the number of questions on the ballot, the total amount of referendum being requested, and how new funding will be invested. There's a decision-making process, and district administration will be providing information and offering recommendations for board consideration. And then the school board will make the final decisions. No decisions will be made during this meeting, but we will ask for consideration to move towards some decisions in future meetings. Key board decision points again. We need to find out what is included in the referendum: a levy renewal, an additional operating levy, capital projects and a tech levy, or bond projects. The questions on the ballot again, the amount of the referendum, and how new funding will be invested. So we tonight are just focusing on the lease levy for Brookview Elementary expansion and the bond election timing tonight. So more information for further discussion and making in this process will be coming this spring in order to dig deeper into these important questions that are listed here. We have 2 major needs for our district. We have the need to renew our operating levy and possibly increase that. And the levy is for learning, that's programming and other needs. We also have facility needs, specifically on the southern end of our district, and that is addressed by a bond and or lease levy. And the bond, again, is for building. The funding needs to come first. That is our top priority. This is a last chance renewal that needs to be done. We only have one opportunity left, and that's November 2nd, 2021, to address the expiring levy that's just under $12 million. Our facility needs have more flexibility. More options are available, from a lease levy for the Brookview expansion that can be completed at any time to address those needs. And we have a bond opportunity with 5 special elections. And we will be making some requests from the board tonight to consider. But again, this is a last chance levy. Just as a reminder, where our money comes from for our school district, 69% of our funding comes from the state with state aids and credits. That is the majority of our district's funding. We also receive 26% from local property taxes, 3% from other, and 2% from federal aid. Okay, just as a reminder, the majority of our funding is from the state. And if you look at this graph, you can see that we have an allowance each year since 2003. The 2021 allowance per ADM, that's average daily membership, would be about $7,070. And the difference between the fiscal year 21 formula allowance per ADM and the inflation adjusted formula allowance is $503 or 7.7%. You can see what inflation has done. And with our state's funding, the funding gap is about $503 per pupil. Okay, current reality across our state, school districts are facing significant funding shortfall. And why are we having this shortfall? State funding is not keeping pace with inflation or increasing costs, as you saw in the previous graph, resulting in nearly a $4 million gap each year. We also have many unfunded mandates for things like special education, testing, teacher evaluations. These cost the district millions of dollars each year. And in current legislation, there are more unfunded mandates being proposed for school districts. Our new challenge as well with the COVID pandemic, we've lost about 3% of our student enrollment this year. That's about 300 students as a result of COVID. And that's about $3 million in state aid. Okay. Also, I'd just like to mention from the previous slide that special education funding with cross subsidy, it's more than $9 million that we're short. It's about 58% that the state and federal sources cover for special ed, and we cover the remaining portions. Thank you. Okay, so we know that renewing our existing levy simply is not going to be enough. The existing levy does not maintain our current programming. We've cut our budget 3 times, totaling $7 million since the levy was approved in 2013, which is about 8 years ago. We cut $2.5 million in the 2014-15 school year, $2.5 million in 2015-16, and $2.1 million in the 2019-20 school year. Okay, even with the levy renewal, we're going to continue to face ongoing budget cuts or reductions of about $1.5 to $2 million annually, just based on inflationary costs and our enrollment. We do know that additional levy dollars will be needed. We know that we need new funds to maintain current programming and to cover the ongoing inflation costs. Any additional funds from a levy could support new initiatives such as academic support or intervention, career pathways, and the high school schedule that would offer students more elective choices. Mental health support, we know that that's a top priority, especially during this pandemic and after. We also know that we do need to go out for a capital projects or tech levy. We've learned a lot from this pandemic. Currently, we're using $2.8 million targeted for technology that comes out of our general fund. We would like to ask for $4.7 million in a tech levy, and that would free up $2 million in our general fund to be used for programming. This tech levy would support a one-to-one technology program, and we again know how important that has been during this pandemic for our students and our staff. Okay. Also, I would like to talk about facility needs. Our top priorities as identified by the community design team that met last year were to expand Brookview Elementary to address crowding. That's an additional 8 classrooms, and to replace Lake Elmo Elementary to address crowding and equity concerns. And when I refer to equity concerns, Lake Elmo is a very old building, has temporary portables have been turned into classrooms, multiple additions. There's no elevator in it to go to the upper level, so that's not accessible for some of our students. And I would call it just kind of a hodgepodge school. It's not up to the same standards as other buildings. I do want to note that custodians and grounds crew, though, have been doing an amazing job of keeping it up and keeping it in tip-top shape for the students as best they can. Give credit there. Other priorities across the district have been more security cameras at doors and other safety measures and further expansions of what we've already started, flexible furniture in the classroom, as well as other projects, including the possibility of Oakland Middle School needing to be expanded with the feeder schools from the southern end coming in. Considerations, what will enrollment look like next year and beyond? We need some time to see what's going to happen with the loss of our 300 students and how many students will be coming back. And also, we need to do an in-depth study of our programming for specialized programs such as the Alternative Learning Center, our 18 through 21-year-old transitions program, dual language Spanish immersion, and other programs. So how might boundary changes impact facility needs? We'll be starting up boundaries studies early this fall, and we know that we can get by. It's going to be crowded on the southern end. We can get by next year with the loss of our students this year, but the following year, the fall of 2022, we know we need to have new boundaries in place to accommodate the space needs. And then we need to consider other facility needs. Okay. So we as district administration, we are recommending to the school board a lease levy option for Brookview Elementary. The project cost has been estimated at about 6.9 million, or just under 7 million, for an additional 8 classrooms. This could be funded with certificates of participation or COPs for 16 years. MDE requires a lease levy to be taken care of over a minimum of 15 years. Taxpayer impact would be $15 a year on the average $350,000 home, and taxes will be payable in 2022. And we could offset some of this cost with proceeds from sale of some properties. Opportunities here, this would address the top priority of the community design team. It's the fastest way to add space in a high growth area of the district. It helps alleviate space issues at both Brookview Elementary and Lake Elmo Elementary. Has the potential to impact fewer families in boundary changes. We know that can be very disruptive to families and school communities. And it takes advantage of a favorable bidding market at this time. Some of the benefits, years of demographic trends continue to demonstrate the need to add space in the south part of our district. This is the only option to quickly add space in a high growth area. We're estimating it would be a 5-month build depending on the access to building materials such as steel. So this could be completed as soon as next January for student use, or at the latest by the following fall. It's efficient for taxpayers because project costs only increase, and we've seen this already with every construction season delay. Although it does not help the quality of learning space at Lake Elmo Elementary, it does help the space issues at Lake Elmo Elementary by allowing Brookview to take in more students that would otherwise be attending Lake Elmo Elementary or Afton Lakeland Elementary. Okay, and then some considerations. If we do a lease levy now on Brookview, what does that do to the timing of other referendum asks? We know we have to go out for that renewal in November. This does not require a public vote, and it again does not address equity issues at Lake Elmo, but it will address some space issues. Okay, the taxpayer pays also about $5 more on a referendum if we do a lease levy than if we put this into a bond election. And it saves about $5 again if Brookview is part of that. We have 3 funding options for facility improvements. The first option is a spring 2021 lease levy. The district administration is recommending or will be recommending to the board. That's the Brookview edition only, which could open mid-year 2021-22 or at the latest fall 2022. We also have the fall 2021 bond election option. We could have Brookview Elementary in there, the expansion, a new Lake Elmo Elementary, and other projects to be determined, with an opening of fall 2024. We have a third option that the district administration will be recommending. This is a special bond election that could be held in February, April, May, August, or November. We would recommend sometime next spring, which could include the Brookview addition, New Lake Elmo Elementary, and other projects to be determined. And it would still, if we delayed the bond election to one of these special election dates, this would still have construction on target to be completed at the same time as if we held the election this next November. So projects would be ready to open fall 2024. So our 2021 spring lease levy, that's a recommendation that will be brought forward from district administration. And also, again, we are recommending a bond option during the spring of 2022 during one of the special election times. This shift to one of the special election dates would allow the district time to evaluate enrollment and delve deeper into a review of our specialized programming needs and facility needs. Okay, so we do have an updated timeline and key dates to note. March this month, we would like the board to consider the timing of the bond, November 2021 or a spring election date of 2022. In April, we would like the board to consider a lease levy for the expansion of 8 classrooms at Brookview Elementary. In May, we need to approve a resolution calling for a referendum. In June, we're moving forward with conducting our second community survey so we can narrow down the questions that we put on the ballot and the wording on the ballot. And during this time, starting right now, the district will be studying specialized program needs and spaces for the Alternative Learning Center, the Transitions Program, and the Dual Language Spanish Immersion Program, as well as other programs. In August, the board needs to approve final ballot language. The deadline for that is August 20th, 2021. And then we have the November 2nd election day, and our fall winter boundary change process will begin and be in place before the following school year 2022. And so with that, a resolution, again, just to note, is not required by legislature, but it's very helpful to have before the summer so people know what's coming. And we'll have something to test on the survey in June with results in July. Okay, so we do know that there are many future decision points that are coming towards the school board this spring and summer. We'll be bringing more information to you in future work sessions and school board meetings. They include what will be considered for the referendum, the number of questions on the ballot, the total amount of the referendum request, and how new funding will be invested. But tonight, we are focusing on the direction that's needed now. Would the board like to consider a lease levy option for Brookview? We need some indication on that. And what is the board's timeline for a bond, November 2021 or sometime during a special election period in 2022? We do have a plan. This is a 3-step process or approach to get what we need for our students and our community. The first step would be the lease levy this spring. The second would be the operating levy with an increase or a capital projects tech levy. And step 3 would be a bond election in the spring of 2022. And we would ask for that time in order to better understand enrollment and programming needs. Okay, so tonight we are looking for direction from the board. At this time, district administration is recommending that the best course of action to address this is the Brookview lease levy right away. Then we do the November 2021 operating levy, possible increase there, or a capital projects tech levy, because we know that has to be passed. Then we go out for a bond referendum in the spring of 2022, because doing that will give us time to study programming and boundaries and enrollment and see what happens to our student numbers. The 2022 spring vote would not delay any building projects or completion with construction. And again, the purpose of tonight is to get direction from the board on the lease levy and the timing of a bond. And with that, we're open for board discussion and questions.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Lansfeld. So it seems as though we have 2 things to discuss here. If we decide to go forward with a lease levy, we would need to put that on an agenda for a future board meeting and vote on that. In terms of the bond, I'm not sure that we really need to vote on that. If we could get a sense of the board as to whether we would want that on the ballot this fall or next year. So with that in mind, let's discuss. Director Sherman.
I just had 2 quick questions on the presentation. It's not necessarily the discussion that I know we're here to have, and so I just want for my own clarification. I thought that the timeline had mentioned August 20th for approving like voting language. And with early voting, is that enough time built in there? That was one. And I just I know that's not what we're here for. So but as you're presenting this really great information, I just had that question. And then also on the boundary process that's starting winter, fall, winter, does that have a completion before families enroll? Will we know those boundaries? Will the families know those boundaries before they enroll? Those were the 2.
Okay. Thank you, Director Sherman, for your question. The timeline, we are working with a community engagement firm, Baker Tilly, and they are keeping us on track with everything in the timeline. So we will take into consideration the early voting with the election timing and make sure everything's lined up. And I can provide more detail on that during an upcoming meeting. With the boundaries, I'm going to turn that over to Director Drummerhausen.
Yes, ideally, we'd like to have boundaries done before winter break, have them completed, because January 15th is the open and alternate enrollment date to get those into the enrollment office. So to give families plenty of time to make different choices if they so choose. So our plan is to have it done before winter break.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Director Hawker.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. First of all, I'm very encouraged by this plan, and the timeline that's very clearly laid out is super helpful, particularly with the build and explaining kind of the difference in the bond options. So kudos to you guys for pulling this together. Where I'm coming from, I'm also very encouraged after the last meeting. I was getting a little upset with the creative spacing option for our families in the South. And I am super excited to see that an expansion of Brookview is a possibility and would solve at least some of the pressing issues and would put a end date on when that creative spacing would be completed or no longer necessary. So to me, that is incredibly encouraging and very responsive from even just a couple weeks ago. So thank you for bringing this forward to us. And in terms of the bond, especially seeing the dates of when that build would be available, like finished, it would be the same date, whether it's in the fall versus later in the spring. And the points that you were making about getting more enrollment numbers, being able to look into our specialized programming, to me, those all are very important arguments. And that little extra couple months of planning to me makes sense, to make sure that if we go into something as big as an official bond for our district, that we take the time to kind of do it right and figure out all the needs and let things kind of shake out in the fall as well, after the lease, or not the lease, the actual levy itself hopefully passes, and that we are set on a good trajectory financially. So those are kind of where I'm at right now. I'm very encouraged by the presentation tonight. So I guess I did have one slight question, just a clarification on the lease levy, or I'm sorry, on the second point, the second part of the plan. If we do the tech levy, is it just a financial renewal of the levy, or is it like a program renewal? I think you said we'll do either a program renewal, bigger financial ask, or a just financial renewal and then a tech levy. So just a little clarification on kind of what that.
Correct. We know we need more than just the renewal because of inflation, enrollment, and other factors. And so we need to make a decision at a future time, but coming up soon. Do we go out for just the renewal and an increase? Or we have the option to go out for renewal and we have a tech levy that would be 4.7 million. Currently, we're using 2.8 million out of the general fund. And so with the 4.7 million, that would free up 2.8 million. We could even ask for more. We will be bringing forward financial information on the tax impact to families in a future meeting coming up to show you different options of what we could do and what that would do to increase or decrease the taxes.
Director Weisberg.
Thank you. I couldn't feel more opposite of what Katie just said. This is very discouraging to me. I feel like our levy passing is monumentally huge, and I feel like a lease levy would put that in huge jeopardy of passing. We have never come together from closing 3 schools after it was presented to the community. Then the levy part of it, if you don't pass this, we're going to cut all these things. Well, we were supposed to have understood that the word efficiencies meant we're still going to have to do some cuts. So then the bond came up and everybody's principal was on there saying, this is what the levy could do for your school. And the bond, excuse me, and it passed. And then 3 schools were closed. So while I understand Katie is concerned about the space issues and we're all concerned about space issues for Brookview. We have 2 relatively empty buildings in our district. And instead of utilizing those, I think what was slipped in the presentation was the phrase, we can sell some properties to offset the cost of the newest school in our district having more space. When we have 3 communities of students that have no neighborhood school. So to me, that is going to rub a lot of people, it rubs me the wrong way. It's going to rub a lot of our community members the wrong way, because not only are we not asking them, we're telling them. We're saying we closed 3 schools. You don't have a right to a community school. And we're not even going to ask you if it's okay if we do this. We're just going to take it. And while, yes, it's not a huge financial change for anybody's taxes, it's still taking money without asking people after we told people this is what can happen for Oak Park and Withrow and Marine, and then we closed them. To me, this is going to seriously jeopardize the passing of the levy, and I couldn't be more against it. I would also, so one of the questions is, what buildings are we talking about selling? Because selling a building is, and if you're talking about selling Withrow or converting Oak Park into admin offices, which was never discussed in the long range planning facility community, that's going to even, and then you're going to use that money to add on to the newest, most modern school. That to me kills the levy. And then the other question I had was, when we talked about this before, even though we're adding 8 classrooms, because the space is already creative, it's not 8 new classrooms of students. I think it was 5 or 6 new classrooms of students. So we need to be clear about that also. And then when we talked about boundaries, and I believe you said that would free up some space at Lake Elmo. So how would the boundaries be redone to put people in Lake Elmo in the Brookview district prior to January? So I know that's a lot of questions. My opinion hasn't changed on this. I think it puts our levy at jeopardy, but those are some questions I had. Thanks.
So we are getting an appraisal. We have not had the school board or asked the school board to decide to possibly sell Withrow building, but we are getting an appraisal on it, and that was brought forward to the board to notify you that that will be done, but no decisions have been made. The classrooms, Mark, if you're here, it would be an expansion of 8 classrooms. Could you address that?
Yeah, it'd be looking at adding 200 student capacity to the building. So currently there's 450 student capacity. By adding 8 classrooms, you add 200 student capacity to it. While doing that, you'd be moving the preschool rooms from where they're currently located to classroom space.
Oh, and then also for building proceeds, just to note, Marine, the building where Marine Elementary is located, that was sold. The proceeds are still there and would be available to put towards the Brookview expansion on a lease levy as well. So that's already been done, and the proceeds should still be there and available to shift. The boundaries, again, looking at the January possible move-in date, that would be the earliest. We know we're not going to have boundaries completed next year until they wouldn't be available for changes until that fall, but just showing you that it should be about a 5-month build if it's approved now, and we could look at possibilities of what that would look like.
Thank you. Director Pavini.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. Truthfully, I don't even know what to say right now, but one thing I want to say though is we're talking about our children. I think we should always have that at the back of our minds. Because you are providing for our collective good, our kids, does not necessarily mean you're depriving another. We know that a lot of the schools, with as big as the southern part of the district is, with its population, has had only 1 school, apart from Afton. 1 school. We talk about community schools. So when we talk about schools and making sure that our kids have conducive environments to learn, please let's not compare. This is not about the kids here having or the kids here not having. Whatever we do, we're looking at the collective good of the district. So coming back and making statements about the past and what the district thought or what was closed or what wasn't closed, it's so unfair, because then we're pitting schools against schools or kids against kids. This is just so unfair. Everybody pays taxes in this district, whether you're north, south, east, west, wherever you are. It is about the collective good of our children. What is best for our kids? It's not a rivalry. So when we speak this way, it's very concerning to me as a parent that we're talking about, oh, this kids here should have and this kids shouldn't have. What is wrong with expanding Brookview? We already know there's been a problem in terms of population. So what is wrong with expanding Brookview? Brookview, it's a school in the district of 834 in our Stillwater district. There is problem with spacing. Lake Elmo is one of the oldest schools in the district, over 125 years old. no space, dilapidated, stinks, you name it. And we're concerned about providing spaces for the kids here. That doesn't stop us if we have the population. If we want to keep the other places open, it shouldn't stop us from doing that. But right now, the needs are here. The 8 classes community design team did talk about a lot of the things we're talking about today. So I'm not sure where you got your information from. I was a member of that community design team. I was there. So we talked about all of this. So to pit one against the other, to me, I think is really unfair. Whether the school is here at Lake Elmo or the school is at Brookview or whether it's Stonebridge, wherever it is still our children. These kids are ours. Why don't we do what is best for them? It doesn't matter where it is. So please, when we speak, if tomorrow Stonebridge needs to have an expansion, we should all be voting for Stonebridge to have that expansion. Not because it's in the northern part of the district. It doesn't matter who goes there. These are children, they're innocent. Then when we have adults speak this way, it's extremely concerning to me. That's the reason why we're here. We're here because we want to be able to show that we're one of the best districts in the state. We're here because we want to be able to show that our schools are the very best. And to sit here in a board meeting and talk about, oh, these kids, this needs to happen because these kids doesn't have, or this shouldn't happen because to me, I mean, I don't even know what to say about that, but I just think it's unfair.
Director Riley.
Thank you. I understand your frustration, Annie. I understand your desires and you're wanting to expand where there is growth down there. I think the problem that we're having here is that from way back in 2015, it was said that these schools were closed in the name of equity. And now we're here talking about how Brookview deserves the addition. And it is not equitable in comparison to any other district or any other school in this district. It has the best of everything. It's the newest school, and that's where the focus is. So that aside, the conversation tonight was how to get buy-in from this community. And when you have empty buildings and buildings that were closed down, and I absolutely disagree with what happened, because what happened was it messed up this district. Was there space? Is there boundary movings and changes that happen prior or as neighborhoods shift and grow? Yes, they are. Now we have eliminated any potential educational system from our district in the northern part of the district. It has negatively impacted communities, and it has negatively impacted towns. And there is not a reason really to pull children in, right? Families want to move where there are schools, and it was stripped. It was stripped from this community. So here we are. We're now needing to ask the community for money. And we're at a point now where you want to take from the community without asking, which is stealing. It's stealing from community members, which you already stole their schools. And not only do you want this community to pay for this addition without asking, you want to sell those schools, not even probe the communities to see if they were interested in any type of magnet or programmatic schooling in this part of town. And now you want to sell their school to pay for the buildings down in the south, which is basically sticking a knife in the back of the taxpayers and turning it deep. And you think you're going to have buy-in for this. You are completely slapping the community in the face. This entire proposal that you have set up here has no benefits to those in the northern part of the community. You want to give and hand over the Brookview without pairing it with the bond. We need those people to work to get those bonds passed. There's reasoning for not throwing everything at it and handing it over. Those people need to be part of this process. I absolutely disagree with this avenue. I do not support this avenue. And I think what you're doing with the way that you have this laid out is you're just shooting yourself in the foot. It won't get off the ground. Thank you.
Director Sherman.
I know it's really tempting and hard not to look back, right? But I'm personally here to look forward and to do the best we can today for our students. This isn't an expansion that is for Brookview. This is an expansion similar to what Annie said, what Director Porbini said. This is for all of our kids, because adding the space at Brookview enables that school, that district school, to take in more kids, which alleviates pressure from schools like Afton, Lakeland, and Lake Elmo. And boundary changes boundary changes don't impact one school. It's a ripple effect, and it impacts all schools. So the more students that we can take in at Brookview, the less we're going to have in terms of severe boundary changes in all of our schools. We still have 400 open spots in Lily Lake, Rutherford, and Stonebridge. We have room for 400 children. We don't have the adequate space in the south of the district. We can alleviate that through boundary change. But if the building, Brookview, the building was always designed to be expanded. It gets more expensive as time goes on. This is a win for staff who has overwhelmingly told us they want this space. We now have 2 different administrative teams telling us this is something that needs to be done. We have families who spoke through the CDT who said this was their #1 priority. This is the most cost-effective way to get a primary priority knocked out that the CDT told us. It is, in fact, listening to the community by us doing this. This project only gets more expensive. It is $15 a year. We are already at the bottom of the comparative list for tax obligations. Taxpayers got money back on their school property taxes, school taxes last year. I see this as a win for taxpayers, a win for students, a win for our staff, a win in every single way. It gives us some breathing room. And yes, we have schools but Oak Park is being used today. And we have information that to use it in a different way is going to cost somewhere between 1.3 to 6.7 million annually. That was what was presented at a work session last year when we talked about special programming that could go there. We don't have that money in the budget. It was 1.3 to $6.7 million annually. I don't understand what's humorous, but okay. So I can get you the work session documents, but that was that. So, I mean, it's not free to operate, and it's in the wrong space. We have 400 spots at Rutherford, Lily Lake, and Stonebridge. So from my point of view, if we can get this done, we're doing it for the taxpayers. And we have used a certificate or a lease levy before. We did it for the ECFE building. We paid for the ECFE building through this exact funding mechanism, and no one punished us for it. It's a beautiful building that serves students from across our district. Families love that space, and we were able to do that for our students. To me, this is about students. This is not about the adults. This is about the students, and how can we serve students north to south? And this enables us, this helps us do that.
Director Weisberg.
Thank you. It to me sounds very naive to say that this is about all students, because it clearly isn't. It's not going to benefit all students. If we want to talk about something that we're going to do for all students, then I get frustrated when people are very picky about when they can look back and when they can't look back. But it's also naive for me to think that people aren't going to remember that Bold said we need to use our buildings efficiently. And they said we need to close 3 buildings. We have all this space. Well, all of a sudden, we don't have all this space in the South. So if we needed to shift boundaries so that we can efficiently use all of our buildings like we were told we needed to do, that's what we need to do. But it's to me very naive to think that somebody who used to have a neighborhood school who no longer does and sees their building be empty all the time is going to say, wait a minute, I wasn't even asked about if I wanted to have this tax and it's just being put upon me. And now my school is going to be sold. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking about selling it to be a dog training facility. Talk about a knife in the back. And that's what's going to offset the cost of a school that my students can't go to. Supposedly it's okay for students in the northern end of the district to be on a bus for hours. That's equitable. I mean, let's not kid ourselves if we're trying to say that any of this situation is equitable. It's ridiculous. And while we could focus on, yes, let's come together, let's have a levy, because that is truly going to affect all students if it doesn't pass. This to me jeopardizes it 100%. 100% jeopardizes it. This is a terrible decision, I believe.
Director Hockert.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. A couple thoughts from the last couple comments. First of all, I believe that our district is still serving all of the students. And yes, it was unfortunate that we did have to close some schools in the north. My understanding is that those communities were not able to support with the populations in those areas, and that enrollment had been going down. And whether they actually had the kids in those areas or those families were choosing other options, that is a whole nother issue. But again, that is quite frankly looking back and not helping us deal with the current issues that our district is dealing with right now. But first of all, just the conversation about us not serving all of our students, we absolutely are serving all of our students. And it is very difficult to juggle everybody's needs at the same time. That's just the reality of education. Sometimes certain needs need to be addressed and others will be addressed next in line. And that becomes part of the discussion as well, is when and how can we eventually get around to making sure that everybody's needs are being met. And this plan that is being set forth today is encouraging and quite frankly has been out in the community, and there has been lots of discussion around the CDT. And quite frankly, the vetting that has been going on has been conversations that are going on in the community. It was all the elections, the last elections were all about these same issues. So it's not like we are showing up and this is a brand new idea. Any of these ideas are new to the community. So I think the results of the last election speak volumes in where the community actually does stand on these issues. And we definitely openly discussed expanding Brookview and Lake Elmo as well, needing to be addressed now. And we do have a plan to address Lake Elmo now in the next couple of years. And well, actually in the next year, 2022. So one final comment, I believe Director Riley made a mention about those people. I'm assuming you mean the people of Woodbury who go to Brookview, not being willing to support a bond or get behind or work towards a bond. And I just wanted to say, the people around here, we were all zoned for Lake Elmo. Everybody knows what Lake Elmo is like, and we all very much want to support a bond for Lake Elmo. So please don't make that assumption that just because Brookview would have this expansion, could have this expansion go through, that they're going to wring their hands of this and then not work towards the bond. I think they'd work just as hard, if not harder, to make sure that everybody in this district is going to be taken care of. Thank you.
Director Riley.
First First of all, please do not ever, ever put words in my mouth. I never said Woodbury people. I was specifically speaking to those people that are in support of Brookview. That is what I was speaking to, the expansion on Brookview. So don't insinuate I've said something I didn't. Second of all, 1.6 in programming to operate Oak Park. 1.3 to close all 3 schools, or 1.2 was it? One of those 2. The math doesn't add up. You can pull whatever numbers you want. It doesn't make it real. Let's see. So you talk about the lease levy for the preschool. Were there closures around that? There were no closures. There wasn't the controversy that we've had in this district. You wanted the feedback from us. We're giving the feedback. If you don't like it, I'm sorry you don't like it, but we're not the only ones that may feel this way in the community. This is what you're up against. The boundaries, if you want to talk about the boundaries that we have right now, in my opinion, the boundaries that we have are intentional. They were intentionally made the way they're made to get the desired builds and build outs from those that our district was relying on for advice, financing, building, people that have something to gain. We have empty buildings. The elections, you want to talk about the elections that just happened had maybe on upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 towards from union support in those elections. They were very, very heavily lopsided in funding, in that the other candidates didn't have that kind of financial gain to put into those. So those are the few things I wanted to talk about. If you don't want to talk about going back, then don't go back, but that's what you're doing. You asked for this input. This is what you're getting. If you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. This is what it is. We're not the only ones that feel this way in this community.
Director Sherman.
I think it's pretty clear where we stand on Brookview and the differences of opinion that we have, and I respect that. We're not always going to agree, but I think that we also do need to talk about within this work session, and I know we've got 15 minutes left, the plan for having a bond as a spring ask. I believe Superintendent Lansfeld, that's what your team is suggesting. I personally support that, and I think the slide that convinces me to support that is the one where you have it laid out where the end build dates are the same, regardless of us asking in the fall or in the spring, because that truly is the key. The CDT identified needs that Stonebridge had, identified the obvious need at Lake Elmo, some updates to continue to house the transitions and ALC and other student programming. So I think that for me, I would prefer to have 2 questions on the fall ballot. I'd prefer to have the spring address the varied north to south facility needs that we have, knowing that the construction date doesn't change. Kind of the go live for all those projects. So I appreciate that was the most helpful slide, and I hope the community sees that, because with a loss of enrollment, we really need to just, I think, relook at some things and take some time so that we're really thoughtful about it. So I just wanted to address that before we come to the end of this meeting.
Thank you, Director Sherman. I was actually going to bring that up. I mean, it's quite clear that we are not going to agree on the lease levy situation with Brookview, but we will have another opportunity to talk about that, because it does seem as though there are enough directors who are in favor of it to bring it to a vote at the board table, probably at our next meeting. But it would be good to give administration some direction about how we are feeling about the timing of a bond. So Director Corbady.
I'm sorry, I had to step aside because my computer was giving me a little bit of a problem here. Um, I want to address one thing. I do support the plan as well. I might have missed that part, but I do support the plan. I wanna make one thing clear. Today we're talking about, and Director Riley, truthfully, nobody is undermining the closure of those schools. If we say we are, I hope that's not what you're getting from everyone here. Because the closure of those schools was done for a reason, and you're right that people were upset. And so the truth is, we do acknowledge that our community, with people that were definitely very upset. But that shouldn't prevent other students or us providing for other students. That's all I'm trying to say. So the discussion for the other we can still have, but we shouldn't correlate that to what we need to do for students in other areas. That's all I'm trying to say. So having that comparison and always using that as a reason why nothing should move forward, it's unfair to the others, knowing fully well, and you would agree that like Lake Elmo, the need is there. Brookview, the need is there. Brookview, like Director Sherman said, has always been built for an expansion. You can look at the plan yourself. It's always had that possibility of an expansion. Um, Director Sherman just said we have spaces in the northern part of the district, our schools there. And remember, some of the schools there have needs as well. They have structural needs that we need to address. But these were the two most important things. Stonebridge is the next in terms of some restructuring for Stonebridge. We still have to address Stonebridge. So let's not lose sight of that. So there are schools in the northern part of the district that we need to address as well. But we have to have a plan for this. And the community design team is a collective, a representation of everyone within our community, regardless of where they were from. I wasn't even part of it. I don't think a lot of us from here were part of it until, someone reached out to me. But it's a collective of all members of our community that represented and came up with the decision to do what we're doing today. So it's not a one-sided thing. It's you gave us the opportunity to go out there and speak for you. That's what the community did when they put all of us out there to do the work. And we all agreed that this is what we need to do. As we move down from Lake Elmo, from Brookview to Stonebridge, and all of the other schools that need structure, just some restructuring in terms of just simple restructuring. But we have to do that. These are our schools, but we need to make sure we as members of our community buy into all of this and are able to make sure our students are learning in spaces that are conducive. You talked about schools that we have, buildings that we have right now. It's true. We have buildings right now, but you're also talking about community schools. And you were asking students to be moved from one part of the district way to as far back as, way out there. Whereas we have opportunities for 400 students within that same area. The population keeps going down. We keep having more spaces. The question for me is, what are we doing with those spaces? If we want to talk, so do we really need all the other ones if we're going to shift students here and there when we want to keep things in specific? So all I'm saying is let's not do a comparison here because something was closed. So because of that, you cannot move forward. The students cannot get anything just because something was closed. That can be addressed. But please, 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 let's not use that to prevent these little kids, these innocent children from having what they need to have. Lake Elmo, we all know, every year, almost every board talks about Lake Elmo. Almost every board talks about Lake Elmo, but nothing is done. This is our opportunity. And I really believe that collectively as a group, it is our opportunity to do what is right for those children. It is not a South versus North thing. And I will keep emphasizing that. Lake Elmo is not a North versus South thing. It is doing what is right for these children. That's all I'm saying. So let's not use what was closed to prevent the children from having the space that they need to have. Lake Elmo is our old building. It's an old building. It's the first building in this district. We're proud of the building, but it's not conducive right now for what those children should be, especially in times of this pandemic. It is not conducive. So do we want to keep them there? Brookview was built. It's a new school, but in terms of population, it wasn't built up to the capacity that I think the plan was. I think they didn't look at what the population that was going to we were going to have in this space. But you and I know that expanding Brookview 8 classes will help offset some of the numbers that we will have at Lake Elmo because of the pressure Lake Elmo has. So let's not compare. Let's just do what is right for our students. Let's do what is right for our community, and let's do what is right for us as a district. Please, that's all I'm asking. Then we can address the other things that you talked about. Thank you.
Director Weisberg, I'm going to get to you in just a second. Director Parbaney, how are you feeling about the proposal with the bond in terms of the timing? Would you like to go forward this fall, or are you comfortable with next spring?
Next spring is fine.
Next spring, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Director Weisberg.
Thank you. Brookview was built to the size that it was because at the time we had 3 other schools to spread people out in. So we can't continue to say we can't go back, we can't go back. And it's very sad that Director Hockert actually thought that Withrow and Marine were both declining in enrollment, and that's why they were closed, because the opposite is true. They were increasing in enrollment, and I think Withrow actually had more students at it than Stonebridge did at the time. So I am going to repeat that we were told the whole the capacity study that they said they did, that they really never did, was done because we were trying to use our buildings efficiently. If we're really trying to use our buildings efficiently, and this is what I'm trying to say, and I'm just going to plead to you, Annie, do you see that if we had 3 buildings that were closed, we already sold one of them and we lost 200 families that we'll never get back? Do you not see that closing those and telling those communities, you don't deserve a school in your neighborhood, you live in the wrong place, that if you do want to get those people to buy in, you can't tell them, we're not even going to ask you. We're just going to take your money and put it in the newest, most modern school. Do you not see in any way that that's unfair, and how they might not want to buy in to anything else you ask them in the future because of the way you're asking? I am not saying I don't want to add on to Brookview. I am not saying I don't want to be able to have a new Lake Elmo. I'm saying the way we're doing it with the lease levy, not asking people, is wrong. And it's going to awake a lot of old feelings that you want to move on from. And I'm not done. And the CDT was not a representation of the whole community. It was a very administrative-led team by the same administration that decided by themselves to close the schools to begin with. When I said I was on the long-range planning facility committee, I was on the original one that never talked about closing schools. I was excited about it because I thought, oh my gosh, our district is going to grow. We're going to build a new school in the South. This is going to be great. And then a new administration came in and said, actually, we're going to shrink. And we lost 3 schools. And that's what started this whole downhill spiral that our district has been in since 2015. So if you do want those people to buy in, you can't just take their money and put it where you're talking about putting it, without asking them and without taking into account that they don't have a neighborhood school anymore and that they were told they didn't deserve it.
Director Weisberg, do you have an opinion on the timing of a bond? No? Okay. Director Riley.
Thank you. I kind of want to just piggyback a little bit on what Liz said about those schools and the fact that it is claimed that they had declining enrollment. They were full. As a matter of fact, they were starting to increase class sizes or class numbers for grade levels. And the difference was what people didn't like in the community was that they had a higher operating cost. But when you have senior teachers there, it is higher. It doesn't matter. That's where the senior teachers wanted to teach. And so that's why the operating costs were higher in those buildings. We shared a principal. We shared administrative duties between schools. So that being said, I guess my question is, you want to hold this in another election in the spring. What is the cost of that?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers right now, but I can provide them at the next meeting.
Director Riley, does the answer to that question depend on what your feelings might be about timing on a bond?
And that does play into my my answer to that. And but again, I can't support the direction that we're moving right now.
Okay, Director Sherman.
I know we got to go to our regular meeting here, and I want to again, I know we can look back and we all have different perspectives and different opinions, and I want to try to find a way to acknowledge those opinions, but at the same time serve the students that we have in the here and the now, and that means across our entire district. We desperately need, it isn't about adding more space. It's, it's not the quality of Brookview that's the problem. It's the lack of the space. The larger we can accommodate, we can make Brookview, the more students we can accommodate there, which in turn alleviates pressure from Lake Elmo and to a certain extent Afton Lakeland. I just want to make the point that, at some point we have to listen to the educational experts, and whether you liked or didn't like the last administrative team, they had this recommendation. Our new administrative team, who we all supported, they're suggesting the same funding mechanism. The staff, the community in general through the CDT, there is mass support for this. I really strongly believe that $15 a year is to be able to have more space for more students, to help alleviate boundary changes that truly will impact, it'll have a ripple effect throughout all of our buildings. So I guess I support looking in more detail at this funding mechanism. I support the idea of a spring bond. I have never really loved the idea of 3 questions on a ballot. I think that is kind of a recipe for disaster, and the levy is just that important. So I know we're not always going to agree, but I respect and appreciate people's opinions. I hope we can just move forward.
Thank you. And we do need to move forward here. We have a meeting that we need to get started with. I appreciate the conversation. It looks to me as though there is probably a need to put the lease levy question to a vote to the board, probably at our next meeting. I actually, also am in favor of that idea. Right now, we are down about 300 students because of the pandemic. And so we're probably administration tells us that we're probably going to be okay for this fall. But I'm very concerned about what's going to happen next year. And we do want those students to come back. But I see the addition to Brookview as a bit of a pressure valve, if you will, in the south part of the district, which is, as we all know, overcrowded. And even if we go forward with the bond and the community says yes to it, it's going to be 2024 before we will have more capacity in the south part of the district. So I am in favor of that, and I would ask administration to allow the board to vote on it at a meeting sometime soon. And I also support a spring vote on the bond. I think that you can look at the history in this district and in other districts about how difficult it is to get 3 questions. 3 questions are just complicated. They're just really complicated for voters. And I just, you know, there's that, but the most compelling reason is that we just don't know exactly at this point in time what we need, other than we seem to all agree that we need a new Lake Elmo Elementary. But because we're down 300 students, is that going to make a difference in terms of what we ultimately ask the community to support in a bond? Are those students going to show up this fall? There are just a lot of unanswered questions in terms of a bond. And I just think that waiting until next spring is going to allow us to answer some of those questions. So that is, you know, that is where I'm going with that. And what I would like to do right now, we're going to end this work session and we're going to take a 5-minute break. And then we're going to start our regular business meeting. So I will see everyone back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we do have a quorum now. I'm sure that Director, well, and here they are. So, so we are coming back from a work session and a closed session for discussions with our attorney. And we are now at item number 3 on our agenda. I move we approve the agenda. Is there a second? Director Hockert. Joan, can you do the roll, please?
Director Hackert,
Yes.
Director Onken, Director Porbeni,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Director Sherman,
Yes.
Director Weisberg,
Yes.
Chair Petrie.
Yes.
You have a 6-0 vote. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Lansfeld.
Thank you, Chair Petrie and Board Directors. Next week, we have spring break coming up. And so just want to remind everybody to please take caution if you will be traveling and make sure you follow up on travel recommendations provided by the CDC. The CDC recommends anyone who travels should be cautious, avoid crowds, wear a mask, wash hands frequently, and limit non-essential activities upon returning home. Returning to work and school, of course, is considered an essential activity. That said, we do ask you to take caution if you're traveling, and the district has provided more information regarding COVID and traveling on our district website. Sports and other activities. Oh my, it is busy, and I don't want to take too much away from Bryn and Marv because I'm sure they have a lot to say. But Director Onken, I know he is participating and helping out with the state wrestling tournament that's going on right now. We have gymnastics, boys and girls, alpine skiing, a pony swimmer at state, girls hockey, virtual spring concerts, including choir and orchestra that are available for viewing on the district's Facebook page, and the partnership plan awards that are acknowledging 8 teachers and staff this year. Thank you to all of the staff, families, and community members and the partnership plan, because that's near and dear to my heart, for supporting our schools. Enrollment, our student enrollment comeback campaign right now is in full swing, and we're making personalized phone calls and sending out postcards to families that left the district this year due to the pandemic and other reasons, seeing what we can do to have them return. And then finally, there is a lot going on at the state level with school district education finances. The governor's office just revised and released the supplemental budget bill last week. Some highlights are provides an additional $83 million to help students catch up on learning. It holds schools and districts harmless by providing $68 million in one-time funding for lost compensatory revenue due to reduction in free and reduced counts due to the pandemic loss. This proposal helps keep schools and programs whole, investing an additional $5 million to expand access to tutoring services for K-12 students with ongoing revenue by partnering with experienced community organizations to deliver tutoring and increasing access to enrichment opportunities. We're excited to be finding out what our district will be receiving with that for summer. And it also provides $10 million over the biennium to fund professional development and opportunities for educators on non-exclusionary disciplinary practices, with the goal of ending the disproportional impact of discipline on students of color and Indigenous students. In addition, midweek last week, the summer school bill, that's HF 1064, captured the attention of everyone when the House version or governor's summer school bill moved to the floor. It's hoping to engage the Senate. And the bill spends $104.4 million on state funding for fiscal year 2021, with the majority going to one-time grants. And then again, this would help make up for programming to support the structure and increase of student learning loss during the coronavirus pandemic. We know that we'll need to be supporting the kids. And so all these bills, a lot of them from Governor Walz, will be increasing after school and summer programming. And the key elements of the plan include expanding access to quality childcare, additional school-linked mental health, and other services. So excited to have some of that come to our school district, and we'll be very busy planning on what we can do to use that to support our kids and families. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the student report.
Yes, I will start with the academic report. So this has been students' last week of third quarter. So in the past few days, many have been taking finals and exams. Next week, there is no school due to spring break. And after that, new classes for fourth quarter will begin. Many students who chose to stay online for the remainder of third quarter will begin attending school in person after next week. So we will have a few more students in the building. Unfortunately, the senior class party committee recently decided to cancel the senior class party that we usually have at the end of every year. However, things like graduation, prom, and the senior parade are being planned, and more details will come on that later in the school year. The speech team has had an extremely demanding virtual schedule this season, especially these last 2 weeks, and will be competing in sections on April 7th. And the Stillwater Orchestra and Choir have recently begun performing in person again, and you can watch and listen to their concerts through Valley Access Cable. With that, I'll pass it to Bryn.
Thanks, Mara. Tonight, I will talk about sports. The wrestling team competed in the state tournament today in St. Michael. The team portion started at 9 a.m. and the individual tournament started at 2 p.m., of which the ponies had 9 individuals compete. The girls hockey team won 3 games and qualified for the state tournament with a 1-0 win over Hill Murray. They will play Eastview in a quarterfinal game this Saturday at 8 p.m. The boys hockey team had an amazing performance, but unfortunately Hill Murray beat us 3-2 on Saturday night. Our gymnastics team won the Section 4AA title and advanced to the state meet, which is scheduled for this Saturday at 11:30 a.m. The girls basketball team defeated North St. Paul in Cretin-Derham Hall to advance to Friday's section championship game at home against Eastridge. The winner will advance to the state tournament next week. Believe it or not, the spring season has started with synchronized swimming. Lastly, baseball, boys and girls softball, girls golf, boys and girls tennis, and girls track open their seasons on March 29th. And boys and girls lacrosse and ultimate frisbee start April 5th. Best of luck to everyone who is starting their seasons. That concludes our report.
Thank you, Bryn and Mara. All right, the next item on our agenda is recognition, and I will turn it back over to Superintendent Lansfeld.
Thank you, Chair Petrie and Board Directors. I'll just give our student just a minute to come online here before we begin. There we go. Tonight we have Milan Yostis, currently a senior at Stillwater Area High School with us this evening. Last year he made it to the International Science and Engineering Fair, the ISEF, and he entered his project for S 2.0 School Safety and Security System in the Science Fair at the Partnership Plan Da Vinci Fest, where he won first place in the Math, Computer Science, and Technology category. His project used cell phones and internet access to regulate who can enter the school. And by using the United States Secret Service threat assessment model, he's able to implement a bag check system that's unbiased and would reduce the amount of prohibited items in schools, thereby making schools safer. That's one thing that he's done. Quite an accomplished student. And we're here to honor him, recognize him for the U.S. Junior Speed Skating Championships competition. This year, Milan wanted the flexibility of online learning to help him keep up with his schoolwork while training for the United States Speed Skating Championship. He's been able to take his learning with him on the road this year as he's trained for and competed in both the U.S. Junior Championships and the U.S. Championships in Salt Lake City. And I am from Salt Lake City, so I hope you enjoyed it there. You also compete with the Midway Speed Skating Club in Roseville, and you usually train 5 days a week during the winter, which is such an accomplishment and it's such a commitment. He competes in a sport not many have had the opportunity to try. Along with his teammates, he works hard by following the motto, go fast, turn left. I want to find out more about that from you. In speed skating, there are 2 types of races called short track and long track. Milan competes in long track. Long track skaters compete on a 400-meter oval, similar to running a track or to a running track. He began as a figure skater, and after watching the Olympics, he became inspired to try speed skating. And a few years ago, he became a member of the Twin Cities speed skating team. And then when it closed, he moved to the Midway team in Roseville. Sarah Kruger, his coach, has said you can see that he is passionate about doing his best and giving his all in every race. He also challenges himself academically by taking PSEO classes, and he competes as a member of the school's robotics team as well. So thank you for coming here tonight. If you just want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
As stated before, my name is Milan Yostis. I do speed skating, programming, pretty much anything with computers. I enjoy programming again. And I'm planning on going into computer science when I go to college. Speed skating has been a very big part of my life ever since I started skating. I started skating when I was around 4 years old. And it's what drew the rest of my family to skating. But again, when I saw speed skating, I decided that I wanted to try doing both of them. So for about 1.5 years, I did both figure skating and speed skating before switching fully to speed skating because I enjoyed it more than figure skating. I was part of Twin Cities speed skating until they shut down the younger kids section. And that's when I had to move to another team where I met all the people from Midway. Midway speed skating is a great group of people. All of them are wonderful to be around, and I enjoy talking to all of them. They're just very supportive of everyone in their group. They're all very kind, and they're just great to be around. It makes me really sad that I'm not going to see very many of them again because of going to college next year. But I will never forget the experiences that I've had with them. For speed skating, again, the motto skate fast, turn left refers to how all you have to do in speed skating is be able to skate fast, because the point is to bring your times down as far as possible. And all you have to do in speed skating is keep in mind that you have to turn at the corners and build speed. And so skate fast, turn left. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I should say. So.
Well, Milan, congratulations. As someone who was involved in Da Vinci Fest for a number of years, I know you come from an illustrious family. You have two very talented older sisters who also were very accomplished at Da Vinci Fest. So, I mean, you probably had to skate fast to sort of keep up with them, I'm thinking. But tell me, I'm just interested, where do you practice? Because you need to have a very particular kind of tracks, ice space to practice. Where do you do that?
In Roseville, there's the Roseville Oval, which is an outdoor speed skating track. It's the only speed skating track that is in Minnesota. The next closest one is down in Milwaukee. So we go there during the winter and train, and when it's too warm for ice, I believe it's turned into a inlining track, which is sort of like speed skating, but on rollerblades. It's what we practice speed skating. It's how we practice speed skating in the summer. And the inside of it becomes a skate park, I believe.
Okay, thanks. And just one other question. Can you tell us where you're going to be going to college?
I'm going to be going to Lawrence Technological University in Michigan.
Okay, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments, directors?
That was my question too, sorry. When he talked about going to college. Congratulations and best of luck to you next year.
Thank you.
Good thought, Director Weisberg. I think we all want to echo that. Good luck next year, and we're glad you were here with us in the district, because you made us proud. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is open forum, but we do not have anyone signed up to speak tonight. So we are going to go to the next item, which is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight are item A, minutes of the March 11th business meeting; B, the disbursement register; C, accept gifts and donations; D, accept the treasurer's report. E, 2021 roof replacement. F, Stillwater Area High School fire pump replacement. And G, human resources personnel report. So if there are no, if there's no interest in removing any of those, I will ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda. Director Sherman? And a second? Director Parvani? It has been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda. Joan, can you take the roll, please?
Director Hackert,
Yes.
Director Parvani,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Director Sherman,
Yes.
Director Weisberg,
Yes.
Chair Petrie.
Yes,
You have a 6-0 vote.
thank you. We're moving on to reports. The first one under reports is district leadership and school board professional development. Superintendent Lansfeld.
Yes, I am going to wait for our guests to come on. Just give her a minute. There we go. I'd like to welcome Paula Forbes with us this evening. She's going to provide a report on some upcoming district leadership and school board professional development that we'll be doing. We're excited to have Paula working with us. She has been an integral part of our high school this year, working with students and providing student voice and facilitating meetings. Brita Marr might have even participated in a couple of meetings with her, and really glad to have her. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Paula.
Thank you, Melinda. Good evening, everybody. Hi, Bryn. Hi, Mara. Good to see you. We haven't seen each other in a couple of weeks. We're moving along with the student conference, so I'm really excited about that, and that's coming up. But I'm also really excited and happy that you actually invited me in to work with the board on some things that are coming up too. So I just want to, if I can share my screen.
Yeah, or I did send the PowerPoint to Carissa. I'm not sure if we could pull it up for her and do it, or if you want to
Yeah, we did just talk about it. If Paula wants to try to share, go ahead. And I have it here if you need me to, Paula.
I think I got it.
There we go.
So for those that haven't met me, my name is Paula Forbes. I am an attorney that has practiced in the Twin Cities for about 32 years now. And I've been working in the education field for the predominant amount of time that I've been an attorney. For the last 10 years, I've had my own practice called Forbes Solutions, and it really has taken a trajectory from doing mainly management and litigation in employment practices and in human rights to really working more in the area of professional development, team development, and most notably, I've been working a lot with all of the area superintendents on an equity initiative called Reimagine Minnesota. So that is really what's taken up a lot of my time the past several years. I also am a trainer. I train a lot of teams, individuals around the Twin Cities and small businesses, as well as in education. I teach at the University of Minnesota Education and the Law. I've been teaching that course for aspiring principals and superintendents since the mid-2000s. I facilitate workshops, and I'm also an independent executive coach. So that's a little bit of my background. I have been asked to come and work with leadership as well as the board on what we looked into, which was 3 particular areas. The first was to do professional development around team effectiveness and working together. How could we work in alignment with each other as a team, both in the board and the leadership? The second was we needed to do, what came up was we needed to do some short-term action planning. This will be more of a work session, but we can do it and learn with some really cool modules and models that I have in our professional development session, and you then can apply this in your work sessions around strategic and action planning and development. And then the third is the Equity Learning Series, which I'll explain a little bit to you, but it's a 4-part series that I have developed that I've been working with in school districts. And this really kind of grew out of a lot of the calls for advice and consulting that I've had in the last several years around issues that have been racially charged incidents that have occurred in school. How do we align our equity plan with our strategic plan? How do we work really more with our community? And how do we work with inclusion and welcomeness in our school culture and environment? So the insights discovery, I think all of you probably have received your evaluators, I hope. If not tonight, you will get your evaluators. It's a 15-20 minute assessment tool when you go online. Insights discovery is something that I learned about 10 years ago. It was an incredible tool that I learned and developed. I'm now a practitioner and a facilitator of the program. It is a global assessment and company. It comes out of the UK, and it's based off of Carl Jung and Jungian preferences for how we show up and how we like to interact with our environment. So we work in the areas of self-awareness, learning about ourselves first, who are we as individuals, and then adapting and connecting to others. And finally, when we adapt and connect, we can become more effective as a team, and we can take actions by creating norms and agreements of how we are going to value each other's strengths and how we perform under stress and what agreements we can make when we perform under stress. I've done this now with several school boards. It's a wonderful tool to really kind of onboard new board members, but it's also a good way of when you have a new board, how you can effectively work together, create those agreements, and then start to really do some planning sessions around some great templates and models that Insights has, and that it interacts with a couple of them that I use as well. So from there, we will work on some planning models for practice to see how that will work in professional development. As we all know, because of the open meeting law, we don't want to make any type of decisions when we're working together in professional development, but we can take some of those thoughts into our work session if we want to do some short-term strategic and action planning around that. Insights is also a great opportunity for us to do some work in change management and how that impacts us internally and how it impacts the external community when we do change through our governance and also in our leadership. So it's really good for that. And then it's a great tool to be interwoven between our equity initiatives and where you want to go with regards to building your equity strategies. You've also asked me to look at some action planning. So we'll do some pre-planning together and thinking through what areas we want to look at. I will be working with your leadership teams and helping them with action planning as well as professional development and team effectiveness. And then we'll work in a work session with regards to developing your next steps forward with regards to some strategies moving forward. And then finally, what I've been asked to do and I'm really excited about is the Equity Learning Series. Like I said, I've developed this about 4 years ago, but really kind of put it into action most recently with things that have happened in our community, both with the killing of George Floyd, as well as with the pandemic and some of the equities that emerged through the pandemic, but also in the last couple of years with a lot of racially charged incidents that have occurred in school districts. And I kept getting calls from people that, would say, Paula, will you help us work, or what should we do? What happened, it's just not who we are. And I always tell people, it might not be who you are, but it's certainly what people perceive you to be. If that's what's happening in your district or in your school building, and that's their lived experience, if that's what they see when they're going through it and they're living through that. So I really wanted school districts, before you start an equity journey, before you start your strategic planning, which I believe the strategic planning should be in line with equity. They should be one in the same. If you will have great strategies, and if If all of your kids get to equity, that's great. And that's what it should look like. So your equity model, in my opinion, should be interwoven with your strategic plan. It shouldn't be used as a sidecar when we get to it or if we have time. It needs to be part of the whole structure of your school system. And what I love about this equity series and the feedback that I've gotten is that we go all the way back. I always say that you have to go back into your history in order to really understand where you're at now and how you can really look to your future. So I start with the legal aspects of race and education, and I do look at it from a historical perspective. We then look at your district and some of the historical aspects in your district and look at your own environmental scan and do a little conversation around that. The next is about change, and we use insights to develop our change management series. And then I have the fourth session centered around creating your commitment to equity and aligning it with your school culture and your strategic planning process. So I know that you are in the process of determining how you want to move forward with regards to strategic planning. And I think that this will give you a wonderful foundation of how you want to move forward as a board in strategic planning. And it'll give you some short-term opportunities to have some plans in place and some discussion around that. And I also hope that you will work with the leadership team as they are going to do their insights as well. And this will give you an opportunity then to work with leadership and the board and be able to do some development around that as we move forward. Any questions that you might have?
Thank you, Paula. I appreciate that. Questions or comments? Director Riley.
Thank you and welcome. I guess I want to touch on something you said just now. In reference, you actually stated that you were speaking about the killing of George Floyd. Mm-hmm. And I just want to elaborate on the fact that there has not been a trial. There has been no verdict. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, the evidence that may be coming in argues that statement. So I just want to make that clear. There's been a little bit of controversy over letters and things that have been sent out to district families with
Thank you for that. So let me make the distinction, and this is when I put on my legal hat, and I apologize for that, but there's a difference between murder, which I would not say because he is innocent until proven guilty, and we don't know at this point if he was actually murdered, and that's the definition of the law, is if someone intentionally or unintentionally took his life, though. But he was killed. I mean, he died, and so
he died, but we don't know that it didn't have anything to do with the level of.
No, and I would never suggest that. I would never suggest that. Matter of fact, I think that's what's really, really important in this case, Director, is that we allow the court system to take what it needs to do to make sure that it goes through that process. And I have been working actually with several organizations to explain the stages of the trial so that people truly understand where we are from the beginning to the end. And so I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that.
Thank you. But I have a couple of questions here on if we want to hit your contract. I have a question around the private confidential information, and I'm not sure if parties of the district in administration, if they are part of this, are aware that you're going to have access to all private and or confidential information of district and its employees. So that
confidential information that I only get relevant information to the work that I'm doing. The confidential information is that once your profile is done, in order for me to do it, your insights profile, that is your personal data. It's not public. And it can't be disclosed without your permission. So when you do your evaluator, it comes to me, and that is and I maintain that. I don't share that with anybody, and you don't need to share that with anybody unless you want to. The only thing that gets shared in our professional development series would be the team wheel, where we all sit on the team wheel. Other than that, it's your choice to share what you would like to share. but I don't share that with anybody else. It remains confidential. And as an attorney, I'm ethically obligated to follow the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act to determine when and I can disclose information, and that would be at the permission of your council and your superintendent and your board.
Right. Okay. So I just want to be clear that the data that you're referring to is the questionnaire that people are being asked to fill out, nothing in employee files or anything of that sort.
Correct. I have no access to employee files. I have no need to know that. And I'm not operating as your school counsel, so I wouldn't ask for that. Thanks for the clarification.
And then, okay, thank you. And then on your scope of work and cost of project, strategic action planning, you have a statement in here that says, I also suggest that you develop a critical response team to address any social media aspects that may arise during the planning and implementation of this work. Could you talk a little bit more on that as to
Sure.
what could be so controversial?
Well, it's only if you want, for one thing, but one thing that Rachel Larson asked me and that we were talking about was that in some school districts, when there are incidents that involve a racially charged incident, the response or feedback that has been given is that sometimes students or people that feel that they've been the victim of a racially charged incident feel that they don't know what the district is doing to take action, or they also don't know exactly how they can respond to it internally, what needs to be said. You might have a great communication team already, and that's already handled. That's fine. Everything in the contract are suggestions. They're not mandated for you to do. But what I have found and what I have started to suggest with school districts is that just like your bullying policy, just like your Title IX and harassment policy when it deals with maybe sexual harassment or sexual assault, you have under the law a mandated process that you need to follow. And my suggestion is that when it comes to race, what we have learned is that a lot of districts do not have a mandated, or they don't have a process that they know to follow. And so one of the suggestions, and Rachel Larson and I have been talking about it, is that Eastern Carver County has had some experiences of late where they have developed a really good critical response process. And it might be something to look into, to model, to think about how that might fit within your district. But what it does is it's really helpful for you to be able to respond immediately to your community, take whatever actions that you need to take relative to the seriousness of the offense, and address it appropriately. So both the alleged perpetrator and the alleged victim are responded to equally the same way you would under your bullying policies.
So that's not necessarily, this is more of something that would be in a procedure in an alignment with a policy, and not necessarily as a result of the action planning in itself. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
Correct. Right. Well, I mean, you might think of the leadership team might be thinking about it in their action planning, which is to develop a critical response process. But anything that you develop would be in line with your policies. It wouldn't be in addition to your policies. It would be aligned to respond. You, in your policies, you have the obligation to respond. Basically, if someone raises an allegation of discrimination, harassment, or bullying, the district has an obligation to respond, to train, to stop it from happening again, and to make sure that everybody involved knows how you're going to move forward and remediate the issue. That's your legal responsibility as a school district. I'm not giving you any formal legal advice. I'm just saying school districts are responsible for that. And so what is the best practice is to have a process in place that responds to that appropriately. And it always is good especially when we've gotten feedback that people feel like they haven't been heard or that they make complaints and people aren't as responsive, to put in place a consistent process so that you are responding to these things consistently across the district. And it's always good to take a look at that in alignment with your policies, but nothing that would suggest anything outside of that.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Sure.
Thank you. Director Sherman, I saw your hand up earlier. Okay.
Thank you, Paula, for coming in today. I'm excited for the work you're going to lead us through. I think the more cohesive we can become as a team, the better we can serve our students. And we've had a lot of transition both in staff and on the board. So I'm extremely grateful. And I know you have worked and you are working in our district, and I've heard wonderful things about you. So I'm really looking forward to bettering our district through this program. I don't know if you have seen it, but in the last summer, the district passed a statement for racial justice. And I just want to make sure that maybe that you're seeing a copy of that, because as I came onto the board, I'm struggling with, and I think a lot of districts are struggling with this, right? We pass a statement and just to understand, how we're going to make it actionable. And I don't want it to be just a statement on paper. I want it to be, we've committed to doing certain things when the board passed that statement. And so I think this is a really good opportunity for the board to look at how can we make this statement meaningful for our students and for our families in the community. So I just want to make sure you've seen that. Perhaps you can help guide us into how to deliver on that commitment that we made to our community. Thank you.
Director Hockert.
Thanks, Chair Petrie. And hello, Paula. I am excited to hear that you've been working with our district in kind of different areas. And I wonder if you could just expand kind of like what areas have you been working with? It sounds like you've been working with the kids, the students, and possibly administration too at this point, or is it more teaching and learning? Just like, who are you involved with in our district? And then are you going to be able to bring some of that knowledge of kind of the whole system into our discussions, or are you going to kind of keep things compartmentalized?
Sure. I'll let actually Dr. Cherry talk about how that might work, how that might look as we pull it all together. I think she has a bigger scope, and so does Rachel Larson, about how everything's going to come together. I began working with the district over the last summer. They called me when they received the open letter from some alumni students of Stillwater School District that were concerned about some of the issues that they had experienced, their lived experience in the district, and they wanted those issues addressed. And so I was contacted by your leadership team to kind of think through, well, what are some things that we could do and how could we address? We actually had a conversation and pulled together a conversation with some of the students. That alumni in that letter had a terrific conversation with them, and they came up with some ideas. They said directly to us that they felt we needed to talk to the current students in the district and to get their thinking around what they believe could be ways in which the district could implement some steps so that they felt more inclusive and welcome, and that there was equity initiatives that were taking place. So at the beginning of the fall, worked with Dr. Cherry, your superintendent, Rachel Larson, and it was wonderful to meet and start to work with Cornelius, who started in your district, working on equity issues. And Dario Otero and I have been working also with your high school principal and several students, including Mara and Bryn, who are here tonight, to create a student experience, to have a conversation with students around what matters in their heart. They have actually, this is something that is student-led, and it is going to be student facilitated. We have just really been helping them navigate the container to have the conversation? How do you have this conversation and make sure that you don't do harm with students and having a conversation? How do you have a tough conversation that gets to the heart of what matters to students and create space for that? And logistically, how do we have this conversation now virtually when we're not sure if this week we're virtual, we're hybrid, we're going back in person? It's been kind of a moving piece, as you guys all know. And so we've been working around that. And the students have been incredibly flexible. They have been so insightful and so helpful to the whole process. And we are almost there. We have a tentative date of April 16th. We are going to use a World Cafe format, which the best we can get as many students. They have come up with 3 powerful questions. They also came up with a video to advertise it. So that video will be done tomorrow, and we'll be happy to share that with everyone. And then they're going to market it to get as many students as possible that want to join the conversation. And the information from that conversation, the planning team will then come back and they will kind of synthesize all of that information, and from that develop some recommendations or some insights that they would like to share with the leadership and the board. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Cherry, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Chair Petrie. I was just going to make a comment. Paula Forbes has been a great support for a long number of years. I've had many opportunities to work with her over the years. When I started with the school district in August and learned that our district had already reached out to her for some help, I was absolutely excited that our district was there and knew to call an expert. And so I've been very honored that she's come back and continued to work in our district. She's been doing this work with our students. I just want to also acknowledge along the way, she has provided a lot of consultation to our district team as well as the high school administrative team. And so she has these tentacles that kind of carry out and the work magically comes together. And so Director Hockert, you asked kind of that bigger question about how does all of this work come together? Well, this is really what it is. It's all of the stakeholders that are understanding what we mean as a school district when we're going to serve all students. And how do we do that best? And that includes student voice. And that also includes making sure that we all are working as a district leadership team, and our leadership team is working with you as our school board. And so I'm just very excited that she is willing to continue to work with us and branching out in this new endeavor.
Thanks.
Director Riley.
Thank you. Ms. Forbes, I appreciate the support and the work that you've done with our students in helping them navigate through some difficult times. This is more of a comment to our administration. But during this time of limited and disappearing funding, I believe all PD should be targeted to reap the biggest academic return for our students. We are legislated to deliver academics. Since 2016, we've spent thousands upon thousands of dollars on equity work with no academic improvements. But we are experiencing a year after year decline of proficiencies. I have a hard time spending $35,000 for this. I really do. I believe we need to and should be spending that money on programs that have actual academic outcomes for our students. Especially now, this year, after they've suffered academic loss, and I just don't. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time with this because we've got 300 students, potentially that we're down now in income, and I think we really need to target our funding directly to achievement, academic achievement and academic gains. If you go off the bar measurements alone, academic failures reduce your opportunities, which isn't even statute, by the way. Opportunities is no part of the statute. So I understand this, you've done some really great work, but I think I would like to see this administration start focusing on true academic increase for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Riley. And I agree, academics should be important. When I shared my vision with the school board, one of my very top priorities was equity. And it needs to be embedded in everything we do, including our strategic plan. And it starts with the school board and the district leadership team. And equity, we've had many discussions about it, but that is about academics too, because it provides opportunities for all students to be successful. And that's part of our work that I truly believe in. And I think it's a balancing act that with equity comes the academics.
Right, but I think that's kind of what I just spoke about, was the fact that we've been doing this work since at least 2016. I look back onto all of our achievement integration plans that we've submitted to see kind of when this started. And we really have not seen any academic increase in our students. We've seen a decline. And so while I agree equity work is important, we've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on this, and the return isn't there for our students. And I think we need to be careful about where we put our money. So I guess to say that we've been doing this work and we haven't had the outcomes that we wanted. So, I mean, do you have to keep doing this work forever and ever and ever and ever, or is the work that we've done not measuring up? So for me, this, it just doesn't measure up for me.
That's a great comment and perspectives and a question. And as a matter of fact, Paula has associates that are actually starting to measure this, and it's called equimetrics. And they're starting it out in some of the other local districts to see what kind of progress and growth that we're getting out of kids, because it's difficult to measure. And I feel like that might be a tool that we want to look at to see what we are accomplishing or what we need to accomplish in the future.
Right. But the true way to close the gap and the true way to help every student get what they need is through literacy. It's through academics, and the equity piece and all of these other things, shouldn't be the main focus at this point, because we're not having those results from doing equity work first, thinking we're going to have the byproduct of academic achievement. So I would love to see us now start to focus on getting our students where they need to be. We're seeing an incredible loss, and we can't afford more students to leave our schools because we don't have that academic strength that we once had.
Director Sherman? I'm sorry, Superintendent Lansell, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to say that equity is kind of one of our North Stars. A high priority is that MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support. And we know with our upcoming referendum, that's going to be another ask to help continue that work.
Okay, thank you. Director Sherman.
I find it interesting here that we have 3 pieces to this professional development, and we're almost entirely focusing on the equity and the validity in that part of this training. I think that speaks to exactly why we need it. I personally agree that it is an investment, but it's an investment that is in it. We're in this for our students. I think that even if you look back at our meetings, there aren't many people in the community who don't think that we need to work better together. And I'm willing to put in that hard work and that effort. And I think that we literally spent $600,000 of taxpayer monies eliminating an entire administrative team. I'm not going back to, was that right? Was that wrong? But that was the investment that was made. in buying out contracts and putting people on leave and hiring consultants. There is a cost, an investment to rebuild after decisions like that are made. And I think that we owe it to our students and to our staff and to our community at large to rebuild on a solid foundation. And I hope that this is a part of that. I will also say that for me, this equity work goes far beyond academic gap closures. For me, I saw some really troubling events last summer. And I'm not talking about George Floyd, I'm talking about some Instagram and some things, stories being shared that about events going on in our schools today that are troubling, that need to be addressed by the school board and by staff. And we need to know better and understand better in order to do better. And so, Paula, I just want to thank you for being willing to work with the board. I want to support the work that we're all trying to do. And please, I hope that everyone can kind of come in with an open heart, an open mind to serve students. I hear Annie say this a lot, we're here for the students. And this is ultimately, socially and emotionally, we need to think about those needs in addition to just achievement. They're all important. And to me, I'm looking forward to kind of building a stronger foundation so we can better serve our students moving forward. Thank you.
Director Pervani.
Chair Petrie, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have a couple of questions for Jennifer and Melinda. You will answer that, after I make my statement, but I just wanted to ask a few questions based on what was said prior. So my understanding is this work has been done since 2016, but instead of having any kind of positive outcomes, we've been having academic decline. So there's been a decline in terms of the academic outcomes for our students. My question is, do you think the cost of having this professional development within the last 4 years is what has led to the academic decline of our students? That's number one. And so do we think that spending, I don't know how much was spent before, but a calculation from 2016 till date, if you put all of those together, are you saying that amount of money has also contributed to the decline, the academic decline of our students? That's number two. Number three, professional development. We have sports. If you can tell me what the contribution of sports is to the academic opportunities of our children, I'd really appreciate that, as compared to the opportunities we're given in terms of our kids learning about things that can make them whole. Not only building what they have now, but building their opportunities, building values, building character. And so when they go out there, we know that as a district, we've invested in children who can stand firm with a lot of pride and say, look, I understand my community, as compared to other things that we do. So if we speak to just academic improvement, are we saying that because we do this work, that is a reason why our children, the academics of our kids have been declining? I'd like to know that, because that's what Director Riley just said. Then another thing is, when we talk about professional development, we provide professional development to all of our staff. Yet, providing this kind of development to our staff is a cost and detriment to the academic opportunities of our students. I have never heard that before. This is the first time I'm hearing this. And Director Riley, I believe you actually are a member of the community equity team. And for us to think that having this opportunity for both our students and the professional development for our teachers is a cost that we cannot have, and is a cost that is costing our children lack of academic opportunities, yet we are asking people to come back to this district for school. Unbelievable. That's all I have to say. It is extremely unbelievable. It is true that the adult population, it's very true that this particular population has lost it. And our children have an opportunity not to be like us. Our children have an opportunity to be way better than what we are. And that is the opportunity you've decided to give to these kids, because the world is a small place. These children are not going to be in our district for the rest of their lives. They will work, they will live with people from all sorts of places, all types of diverse opportunities. And the mere fact that we think it's a waste to provide our teachers with professional opportunities to be able to invest in children based on the diversity in their classrooms, and we think it's a waste, unbelievable. That's all I have to say.
Director Porbini, thank you for your questions. Our student achievement report and updates will be coming at our next board meeting. So we'll have more information on academics and other areas. Our achievement and integration plan was just approved by MDE and said that we have met all of our goals, and not every district gets that. I've personally seen the bar, all sorts of programs making a difference, Story Arc, all of the mentorships making a difference in children's lives. I do know that our demographics and our student population has been changing. Being at elementary schools, we're seeing young children coming in without those early learning foundational skills. And it takes a lot of work to support our students. But I truly believe the best thing you can do for our kids is to put a great teacher in front of them, and the community does appreciate and supports our teachers and other staff. They work very, very hard, and we'll continue to work through our MTSS system, and we will continue to work with equity. And all of this needs to align. We need all of our systems to align, and it starts with the school board and your goals. And then underneath that, we need to align our strategic plan, our world's best workforce, our portrait of a graduate. And then underneath that, we have our school improvement plans. And together, we need to work together as a team to support our kids and our families and our staff. The professional development, I used to say, why am I in education? It's to see the students learn and grow. But over the years, I've also realized that the staff and the adults need to learn and grow in order to support the students learning and growing. Okay.
So a quick one here, sorry. So what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying right now is the cost of spending for professional development that has been done within the last 4 years, as claimed by Director Riley. So the cost of that and even the education is not the reason why the academic opportunities of our kids are declining, because that's a correlation she's trying to make. That spending money on developments with respect to equity does not in any way show an outcome that has improved the knowledge of our kids. So indirectly saying our teachers have had all of these opportunities, yet it doesn't show anything when it comes to the education. I don't really, I still don't understand where she's coming from with respect to the correlation between that and the academic decline, because that's not what this is about. Academic decline, I really don't understand what, so are you saying that the cost and the program itself in terms of professional development for our teachers has nothing to do with whatever she claims, but you are saying we don't have that in terms of our children's education, all of the measures and all that, they've met most of it. That is not to say that when children come into the school, preschool or kindergarten or whatever, we have some of those with some of those gaps. But that has nothing to do with teachers actually taking the professional development opportunity on equity issues. Because that's her claim.
I would say we need more professional development to have a bigger impact on our students.
What is it?
We need more, but we've been doing a lot with the budget that we've had. The learning and innovation team have been very thoughtful about this, working with our district leadership teams, our administrators, and our teachers.
I understand that, Melinda. My question is, what is the correlation between teachers taking professional development courses on equity and diversity? What is the correlation between that and the academic decline of our students? That is a question that I'm asking. If there's any, of such, because that is the claim. Teachers taking professional development, we know that happens, but I'm talking specifically about this because that's the claim.
We
So
have
that's what I
not
want to.
specifically measured that. Tools are coming out, and like I mentioned before, we have equimetrics that is measuring it. And we need to probably find a tool to start measuring what we're doing in that area.
So are you agreeing that regardless of the training that teachers have been taking, the professional development when it comes to equity and diversity, they have not been able to apply that, because that's what you're insinuating now, that they've not been able to apply that to the teachings of our kids in general? Except you're telling me something different that I'm not hearing.
Now, anecdotally, I've seen a huge impact on our students.
Can you
I
explain
don't
that?
have from the professional development, the way teachers instruct, the way they interact with students, the way they build relationships. I've seen a tremendous difference and impact after professional development.
Thank you.
Dr. Cherry, would you like to respond to that?
I would just, thank you, Chair Petrie. I'd like to respond back to Director Porbeni's question about the correlation. I would be very clear that we are not measuring things in terms of a correlation of attending equity training and then a direct result of a reduction in achievement. I will say that our staff have been attending professional development related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. All teachers across the state now are required to take professional development and cultural competency in order to renew their licensure. So that is a key component of professional development. Professional development is also one of the key areas of our achievement and integration plan, where we're required to spend money on professional development for our teachers specifically around achievement and integration. And so those are all areas that we strongly believe are of great value, not only to our teachers, but also because our teachers are engaging in those types of professional learning activities, it has a positive impact on our students.
So thank you. Chair Petrie, my sincere apologies here. Thank you for responding to me and for providing clarity. The reason why I'm saying this is because when people make statements, and you can clearly see that these statements are heavy. You can clearly see that there are all sorts of coded language that are weighted into all the statements. And the reason I'm saying this is to provide clarity as to the notion that there is no correlation with respect to the decline in students' academics. Where is the relationship? When you provide professional development for teachers, regardless of what professional development you're providing for teachers, the impact is for teachers, or the expected outcome is for teachers to be able to apply that, develop knowledge, develop competencies, develop skills in areas that will help them in so many ways apply those opportunities to the students they're teaching, regardless of whether the students are disabled, on gender issues, LGBTQ, regardless of what it is. It is a great opportunity, but to say that with all of those opportunities, there's a decline with respect to the academic opportunities, I still don't understand that, except I'm not hearing something that needs to be said right here, because that language is very weighted. It is not in my place to provide clarity to the language that was made, but there's something wrong with that language. And I sincerely hope that you will clarify, except you're saying, based on what you've just said, that all of what you said were untrue. I mean, we're just biting fingers here. Those are untrue. Those statements are untrue. Those are just coded language to just say something. So if you can clarify exactly what you mean by teachers having this professional development and academic opportunities declining amongst our students, that would be great. Except I'm not hearing something, but I think there's an injustice behind that statement. There's unfairness behind that statement, and there's extreme bias behind that statement. Except you want to clarify yourself.
Director Riley.
Thank you for letting me finally respond. No, you've actually insinuated I've meant and said a lot of things that I didn't, and I advocate for academics, not against equity. And our staff and our students have had much training and continue to have much PD on that topic. That isn't my question or my discussion. We are competing for dollars. We have a statutory obligation for academics. My point is, with the money that we're spending right now in limited time, in limited funding times, and limited as we're watching our enrollment numbers decline and our academic rates decrease, we're going to continue to see more people choose other options. And we can't afford that. We need to spend the money we have for PD focusing on ways to improve our academic outcomes. That's not what's been happening. And we've been doing this for many, many years. I'm not saying that we should focus on equity. Equity is a very necessary thing. However, I believe that the approach we're using is not the best approach for all of our students to grow academically. That is what my point is. We have to take the money that we have, the limited resources that we have for professional development, and get the greatest return on them. That's where I'm going with this.
Before I call on Director Sherman, I'd just like to call on Superintendent Lansfeld, because as I understand it, there is money in the budget to do this sort of board development. And also there was a need, because there's been such a tremendous amount of turnover at the administrative level. There's a tremendous amount of turnover at the board level. You know, this was money that was in the budget, as I understand it, specifically for this, to be able to allow for this kind of purpose. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, and our strategic plan is going to need to be reviewed and updated at the end of this year. And we have started our meetings this year with the world's best workforce. And when we talk about academics, social emotional growth, the whole child, equity, everything falls under that strategic plan and the world's best workforce. And we need to align everything together. We have a very unusual situation here with a new leadership team, a lot of new board members, a lot of people without historical perspectives here. And we need to come together and we need to collaborate, communicate, and align and look at our systems. And that is going to be the most efficient and effective way to focus on academics, social emotional growth, equity, everything that we do is going to fall under that. And we have to do it right. That is our guiding star right there.
Director Sherman. You are muted right now.
Sorry, I got it. I just wanted to see that I think really productive and constructive boards do this kind of work. It's an investment, but I think it's an investment that if we come with open hearts, open minds, I think it will pay off. I think we can prove to our community that we're ready to come together for all of our students. I get a little uncomfortable when we're talking about achievement and connecting it somehow to equity work and kind of along that line of what Annie was talking about, because I seem to remember, and I would love to see this information represented. And so this is just an ask of Dr. Cherry and her team. But there was, during the A&I presentation that from last year, there was specific achievement information presented on AVID specifically, and how successful that program has been. I think there was also considerable growth. I mean, we want to talk about, you can't get from point A to point Z without first celebrating the success of some growth along the way. And so I think that when we talk about achievement, which is certainly going to take a hit with COVID and everything, the unprecedented situation that we've been through. So I guess I would love to see that information represented to the new board or updated, because I think it would be beneficial to hear. But I guess getting back to what this is about today, which is about professional development for the board, more than just equity, but in our goals, how we work together. I think that this is going to be something that we all benefit from. And I think that I just, again, want to thank Paula for being here, for sitting through this conversation. You probably weren't expecting it to be this long. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do some good work. And I guess I would just request that we bring this conversation to an end, Chair.
Director Riley.
Thank you. Director Sherman, I just kind of want to clear up that when you're talking about growth, and I would love to see everybody at proficiencies, but I'm not sure if you're aware that proficiencies in an academic center is only 50 to 60% knowledge. It's not an incredible amount. I would love to see everybody at mastery, right up at 100% of all knowledge. We're only asking for 50 to 60%. That's proficiency. And to settle for less than that, I struggle with that. I really, really do.
Director Sherman.
Again, Dr. Cherry, the information on the equity work, the A&I program, and the specific achievement of our AVID students, which is a significant investment that we make as a part of our A&I funding, and is celebrated and revered across the state. I know that work has been honored, and I just want to see that program has paid off in a way that I think that we can all be proud of, and we should all celebrate. And I would like to say I agree with Director Riley. We should all be striving for proficiency, and we are all here to do that. But we have to do the work. So I look forward to starting that work.
So we seem to have veered off a little bit here into a different kind of conversation entirely. So I would just like to say that I am very much looking forward to this work that we're going to be doing with Ms. Forbes, especially in light of the racial justice statement that the board made last year in response to the letter from the students. This work going forward is going to be really helpful to us in sort of doing our strategic planning work. We have not even set any board goals for the year, but we want to be able to do it through this equity lens. And I think that all that work together is going to be really, really important and powerful for us. So I just want to say thank you to Ms. Forbes for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you during our sessions coming up here very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you guys next, I think, in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda.
Have a good break, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, just one more thing, excuse me, Chair, and I apologize. I just want to let Director Sherman know that AVID is an opt-in program and it doesn't encompass all the students. And so that is actually a limited amount of students that is reflected in that. So I would be looking for a larger portion than that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go on to the next item, which is contract reviews.
Good evening, Board Chair,
Dr. Time.
Superintendent, directors. I'm pleased to bring forward 8 contracts that have met the requirement of being under $50,000 that have been approved by administration. I'd stand for any questions that you may have. I know that the meeting is long, so if you have a question, I'd be happy to try to address those. Otherwise, they're there for your review.
Any questions about those contracts? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Time.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next report, and that is in-person school board meeting update. Mr. Perry.
Good evening, Chair Petrie, Superintendent, board members. As a result of conversation at the board chair meeting, I have brought forward some options for conducting board meetings in person, and those were included in the packet, and I'll go ahead and share them here today. Give me one second. So I'm hoping you can all see the screen here. We talked about what it would take to move from running these meetings in Zoom to in person, specifically in the context of bringing those meetings to Oak Park in order to take advantage of the larger space and the distancing that we can provide between board members, administration, and members of the public to deal with the pandemic there. I tried to keep this fairly simple. On the left side, we have what we're doing right now, board on Zoom. And as a real result of having the board meeting on Zoom, the administration's on Zoom, open forum is on Zoom, and the audience is on Zoom. So the real question is, as we talk about moving the board back to an in-person setting, what do we do with those various components? And the question that gets raised then really comes down to is whether the public would be in person or not. I'm operating on the assumption that if the board's meeting in person, administration is also going to be there in person having these conversations together. And so we would need to make the decision, the board would need to make the decision as to whether or not the public would be attending online at those meetings or whether they would be in person. And so if we determine that they would do online attendance, then that would mean the open forum goes online and we patch that into the board meeting and all audience members can view on YouTube as they can today. Alternately, we could look at doing public attendance being open at those meetings with social distancing or physical distancing in place. And to do that, that would then require that open forum participants come in person to present. And we would set chairs apart in the audience area so that audience members could also observe physical distancing from one another. This is a map of what that setup would look like. We are looking at providing each board member with their own table and their own microphone, similarly with our student board representatives and administration that might be presenting at those meetings so that the physical distancing can be observed. The setup is a little bit different than we've had in the past. The main challenge was getting a setup that would allow the people, the board members closest to the front of the room to be able to see the TV. So it's tilted in so that there's a viewing angle there. And then opening up the room so that we can fit enough people around the table to have those conversations. There is an open forum podium and audience seating. The audience seating isn't actually how that would be. It's measured out a little bit differently. We would be able to see over 30 audience members in this kind of a setup. So my purpose today is to really bring you this information so that the board can have a conversation about how you would like to meet to conduct your business.
Okay, questions. Director Weisberg.
Thank you, John. And I just want for the public who I'm sure is going to have these questions, I had asked the question, why are we considering moving back to Oak Park when we were at City Hall? Because when we were at Oak Park, we had so many complaints about the sound quality and things like that. And I understand it's a space issue, so I just wanted to be sure people realize that. So I'm hoping this is just a temporary move because it was difficult. I found meetings difficult at that space. And I think it worked much better at City Hall and we didn't have the complaints about the sound.
Yeah, the sound issue was resolved. I apologize, it took longer than maybe it should have. We had in the original implementation, a bad amplifier, and it took about 90 days for us to get the manufacturer to recognize and own the problem and provide for that exchange. So there is a new amplifier in the space and it doesn't have those audio issues anymore.
Thank you. And then in the drawing, is that saying that only 8 people could be in the audience?
No, I didn't show the whole room because the room is so long that it would make everything else very small. We can fit over 30 people in the audience.
So
distance.
So that's what we would need to figure out is like how we could pick who got to come and who didn't get to come every meeting. If we could only put 30 people in, is that right?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I'm just saying if we're going to have a limited space, then the board would need to come up with some way to say who could come and who wasn't allowed to come if we have to cap the audience. Right?
To some extent. I mean, every room has a maximum occupancy. The maximum occupancies have all just been drastically reduced under the pandemic directions from the governor.
Right. I'm just saying that's something that we would have to come up with. And I don't know how you would do that in a fair way. If you're going to say we're only going to let 30 people in, then which 30 people get to come in is something that we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weisberg. I was just going to throw this into the mix. I did a little bit of research this week on what other districts are doing. And one of the things that I came across, and this is pertinent to your question, is one of the districts also had limited seating. And so they had a sign-up sheet that collected information for contact tracing. And so if you only have 30 slots on your sheet, then only 30 people could, presumably that would be the way they limited it. So they're collecting contact tracing information. And then once you have 30 people signing in, then and the chairs are full, then that's how a limitation could happen. So it's just a suggestion. I think administration is probably going to figure this out. Director Riley.
Thank you. Is there, we had spoken before about the safety on the outside building. Is that going to have to be then remediated, and what is the cost for that again?
Have to defer that to someone else. I'm not aware of the safety concerns or any cost estimates to repair them.
I'm not aware of safety issues. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, there were issues with lighting, and Liz, do you remember what else? Was it something with steps or stairs or something? Parking lot?
Lights worked at night. I think that's what I remember. And it's not winter, so we're not having ice to worry about like we did before. But I think previously when we were there and there was ice and there weren't lights, that was one of the issues. But I think mainly I just remember the lighting in the parking lot at night.
Okay. At the schools I've worked at, you can usually set timers for when the lights go on and off, but we can look into what the setup is with Oak Park.
Yeah, there aren't lighting. There isn't lighting, I don't think, in the parking lot. One thing I would suggest, I'm not sure where this is going, and it really probably doesn't matter what I say tonight because I'm in the minority for everything. However, I myself have not received a shot. I am not planning on getting a shot. So my concern is the extra availability should probably be left for those that are ill, that may need to be remote. So that should be for staff or board members, the monitor or the feed. So that's my concern.
Director Sherman.
And thank you, Chair. And just in your research, you mentioned that you looked at what other districts do. I've done a little bit of that myself, and some districts aren't having an audience because of I've noticed that like they're not allowing the public in the building because it's broadcast. And then it would just make it, we don't know who's been vaccinated or who's not. We don't know who's coming in and the contact tracing and who they've been exposed to. And is that something that, I guess, to me, I would at least consider that or want to hear people's thoughts on that. But I think that if we started out perhaps without an audience, knowing that everyone's used to right now watching on YouTube, perhaps we can just think of bringing in our open forum speakers. If people sign up, or they can get, that's kind of the list or what have you. But I guess I just am a little nervous bringing in an audience, maybe, crawl before we walk, before we run kind of thing. That would be my.
Okay, thank you. Director Probani.
Thank you, Chair Petrie, for the opportunity to speak. I personally think that the audience, they can have a choice to not to attend if they don't want to. But with respect to board members, I think we should be in person. I personally think that all board members should be in person because I think it would be hypocritical if we have clamored for students to go back to the classroom and also clamored for teachers to go back to the classroom, yet we don't want to come in person. It would be highly hypocritical for us to make excuses as to why we can't be there. That's just my opinion, but for members of our community, I think they can have the choice to attend or not to attend. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions, Director Hockert?
I agree with both what Director Probini and Director Sherman were kind of alluding to. First of all, I do think that we should go back in person. I am anxious to get back in person. And I think it does send a clear message to our district and to our students that if it's safe enough for them to be back in person, it's safe enough for us. However, I also share Director Sherman's kind of concern that we don't necessarily want to jump in too fast either. It's been over a year since we've been in person. And I kind of like the idea of possibly keeping the audience, at least for the time being, virtual while we kind of reacclimate to being all together in person. So I kind of see that as a nice compromise, but I too am anxious to get back in person.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Director Sherman.
I just wanted to thank John for the report. John, it seems like you've had different iterations of this coming multiple times depending on where we were in the pandemic. So it's, I appreciate it. It makes logical sense and very easy to understand. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just one thing I would offer in terms of the question of whether to do the audience in person or not is if you're going to open the building to the public, open it. And if you're not, I would ask that you close it. If you open it for open forum, but not for audience, it creates a dichotomy where you get to come in person if you sign up for open forum. If you escort open forum users out afterwards, then if you speak at open forum, you don't really get to see the meeting because now you're going out and getting, so it creates some awkwardness. So either people can come in and stay and watch, or we'll do open forum and bring that in over Zoom.
That makes sense. So we will bring this forward at a subsequent meeting for the board to vote on. And thank you, John, for all the work that you put into this. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna move on now to, we have one action item tonight, and that is policy number alignment. And I believe that Dr. Cherry is going to speak on this.
Thank you, Chair Petrie, members of the board. Last meeting, I was able to share a report of the status of our current school district policies, where we utilize a numbering system for all of our newer or newly adopted models, or I'm sorry, adopted policies that follow a numbering system laid out by the Minnesota School Board Association model policies. And then we also have a number of existing district policies that have not been reviewed by our board recently or updated by our school board recently, which utilize an older numbering system categorized by a name and a letter followed by a number. So we have two different systems that we're currently using. The older policies are categorized by BGPs, which are board governance policies, R, which stands for results, SR, which stand for statutory requirements, and SBR, superintendent board relationship. So these series of policies make it a little bit difficult to find policies on our website and to navigate how to locate these. At this time, we're proposing, the administration is proposing, and our policy working group is proposing that we align these two numbering systems into one. And since we're on our way there, we are proposing that we utilize the Minnesota School Board Association model policy numbering system There are nearly 100 policies that are on our books. We would keep the same policy names. We wouldn't make any changes to the content or the substantive nature of the policies. What we're asking for at this time is just a change in the numbering system so that they are aligned. And at this time, I would like to recommend that we move forward in a new policy numbering alignment as showcased in your board packet.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I get a motion to go forward with the renumbering of the system as proposed by administration and the policy working group? Director Hockert, second. Director Sherman, discussion. Director Riley.
Thank you. I'm not going to belabor this. I think I went in pretty in-depth conversation last board meeting around this topic, and I completely and utterly disagree with this direction. I think it adds more confusion. This adds double policies. And now what policy do you use? There's confliction. And as I read this, if these policies now that are the old ones that should not be in existence any longer because we've made new ones, you are now bringing them forward into the alignment, making them even more relevant. And as I read it, if I were to disagree with bond or levy action, these policies would prevent me from speaking out against it in my personal and board capacity. So are you sure you want to continue with this tonight?
Dr. Cherry?
Just a response. The proposal before the board at this time is not an adoption of any new policies or a revoking of any policies. It is simply a change in a numbering alignment. And so there are no proposed changes to removing or adding any policies at this time. It's the same policies we already have on our books.
Director Hockert.
Dr. Cherry kind of covered what I was going to say. We were on the same page with that one.
All right, thank you very much. Director Weisberg.
Thank you. I understand that you're maybe don't think that it reemphasizes these policies, but that is exactly what it's doing. And I was on policy for an entire year, and it kept coming up that we needed to revoke, because we've already done these policies again. I don't have a reason to explain why it didn't get done, but the fact that they are not only not being revoked, but then they're coming back is, to me, muddying the waters where they don't need to be muddied, especially when we have just heard recently that there are some finance policies that we should have that we don't have, and possibly even some procedures. And I think the time would be better spent addressing those very pressing needs instead of adding more things that we're going to eventually have to revoke. Thank you.
Director Sherman.
I will be supporting this today. As Dr. Cherry said, these are all active policies. They've all been on the website. They're all valid. They weren't revoked. They are all out on the website. I think that this is a good first step to having a common naming, labeling system so that people can more easily find them. And hopefully it'll make the updating process a little bit more smooth for the committee as they just start their work. I also am grateful to hear that the 700 series of policies that Director Weisberg just mentioned, that they are also being looked at. It seems like there were some gaps, and I'm glad that the committee newly formed has kind of identified those gaps and is doing that work. So I appreciate it, and I will be supporting this. So let me know how I can support these efforts.
Director Corbani.
Thanks, Chair Petrie. First, Jennifer, thank you for the work that you've been doing. So thank you very much. I wanted to also use this opportunity. I've been listening to Director Weisberg with respect to the revocation. I'm still a bit confused. So I was wondering if you could please help clarify as to what exactly are you asking to be revoked when nothing, no new policies were put in place. So you're asking to revoke, are you asking to revoke even the policies, just the change in numberings? So we're revoking all of our policies, we won't have any. So I'm just a bit confused because to me, I think there's no need for that because there's no new policies, nothing has been changed except there's something I don't know. So I just wanted some clarification there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to clarify. I think Tina went through her list and basically said which policies, when we moved over to the MSBA numbering system, we had policies that basically we recreated with the MSBA numbering system. So at the time of those being recreated, the old policies should have been revoked. They weren't revoked, even though they should have been. So rather than just throw them all back on and say, now these two policies are the same thing with additional wording that in some cases in our district, attorneys have argued against. We're bringing those back where they should have been revoked as soon as the MSBA numbered policy took its place. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, but there was no changes to anything now, though. It's just the numbering. But that's not to say that we won't look at all the others that you're talking about in case there are some out there that are duplicated. While you were in the policy committee, that will be looked at. And if there's a duplication, of course, the team will do some work there. But with respect to what is here now, there was no content change. There was nothing that was changed. It's just the numbering. The policies are still the same. But I hear what you're saying. If there are duplicates out there, I'm sure the committee would actually look to make sure there's no duplication and will, do something about it. So that's all. So thank you for the clarification.
Director Hockert, I thought you had your hand up before.
Thanks, Chair Petrie. And just to echo what Annie was saying, like we are making sure that this is not a duplicate situation. And the previous BGP that we've been discussing was definitely a review and not just renumber. So yes, there is some duplicates in there, and there's been extensive work, years worth of work in the policy group that has gone into that. And as we stated at the last meeting, our focus now is to stay attentive to the gaps in our policies. As Director Weisberg and then Director Sherman brought up, we are tackling the 700 series and taking a look at our financial policies as we have identified some gaps. So we're trying to figure out where the holes are first to make sure that we shore up our policies, and then we will definitely go back and look at where there's duplication as soon as we have identified that the other needs have been met first. So that's our plan going forward, and we look forward to more discussions from the whole board regarding our financial policies.
Director Riley.
My question wasn't even answered. So I laid all that information out for you already. I did the homework, I did the research. I showed you where everything aligned, and it wasn't my work. I wasn't on those committees. It was committees that have been in working on this for years, prior to 3 boards ago. There are issues with constitutionality in some of these BGPs. And we've spoke about that, and I talked about this, and Chair Petrie said that she plans on governing by these BGPs. And I asked the question, they're unconstitutional. And I gave you the opportunity to clear it up. We've had Peter Michael, send a memo to the entire board on his interpretation of that and the constitutionality of it. And it is just completely ignored tonight. And the fact that, you don't think I understand the difference between a numbering system and what the content is kind of condescending. I'm very well aware of what's happening tonight, but the fact that you're bringing them forward and making them relevant according to, emails that we've, shared back and forth prior. It's concerning, right? It's very concerning that you are now going to vote on this and accept the standard of practice of these unconstitutional policies. Thank you.
I would just like to clear up that I have not said that I'm going to govern according to the BGP. I beg to differ on that, Director Riley. All right.
No, you did, Chair Petrie. You absolutely did.
You're kind of out of order. I think that if no one has any other questions or comments, it's probably time for us to vote. It's been moved and forwarded that moved and seconded that we rename or we do the policy number realignment. Joan, can you take the roll?
Director Hockert.
Yes.
Director Porbeni.
Yes.
Director Riley.
No.
Director Sherman.
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
No.
Chair Petrie.
Yes.
You have a 4-2 vote. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to board member reports. The first one is board chair report. I have nothing for this evening. Working group reports, finance and operations. Actually, Director Onken is not here tonight.
I can just say we met this past week, and everything was basically discussed here. We just previewed the presentation from the work session and some different numbers. So that's about it.
Director Weisberg.
Yeah, I would just like to add that since we are finding out that there are some finance policies we don't have, I offered in an email if the finance group and the policy group needed to work together to help fill those gaps, that I'm very willing to do that also, because we're also finding out there are some procedures that we needed to have also. And I feel like since I've been on finance for the last 2 years and I've been on policy, I'm happy to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislative, we don't really have, there is no report tonight. I would just say that I'm going to be attending a session tomorrow by MSBA that's going to be talking about what's going on in the legislature right now in terms of funding. So I will try to update the board after that. Policy committee, was there anything more, Director Hockert?
Just to tag off Director Weisberg's comment, that is something, having the finance and ops group take a look at our financial policies did actually come up when we were discussing the 700 series in order to get some input from that committee as well, and then also to involve more board members in the financial decision-making process for these new policies. So I'm happy to hear you're up for it, and we look forward to working with you guys. And we meet again next Wednesday, a week from yesterday. So that's it for policy.
All right, thank you. Any board member reports for tonight? Director Hockert.
One quick update, 916 has a new superintendent. Last night, we voted to offer a contract to Dr. Valerie Bowe. She works within the 916 district as one of the special ed directors. So congratulations to her, and we're excited that she'll be taking on the superintendency.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no more reports for tonight, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.